President Trump just shook the global economy with brand new tariffs announced on April 2nd, 2025. From iPhones to cars, your everyday items are about to get a lot more expensive. But here's the real question: who's paying the price, and how will businesses survive? Welcome to 10 Minutes for Supply Chain, where we simplify complex supply chain concepts. In this video, we'll break down: why was the need for tariffs? Current trade dynamics with key countries. Items whose supply chain and price will get impacted. Impact on trade routes and logistics. Changes in global sourcing strategy. And eventually, who ultimately pays the price? Stick around, because what we're about to reveal could affect your wallet, your job, and the future of global trade. Let's start. Why was there a need for this tariff? Trump's administration has stated the following reasons. Trade deficit concerns. The U.S. trade deficit with China exceeded $375 billion in 2024. Unfair trade practices, dumping of steel, aluminum, electronics, and solar panels. Job protection, aimed at reviving domestic manufacturing sectors. National security, especially in critical sectors like semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and rare earth elements. These tariffs are a strategic attempt to push back against what is viewed as economic dependence on foreign suppliers and reduce reliance on adversarial or overly competitive trading partners. Current trade dynamics with key countries as of Q1 2025. Here's a snapshot of U.S. trade relationships with the 5 most impacted countries. From China, U.S. imports worth of $575 billion, and trade deficit is of $375 billion, with the goods like electronics, machinery, textiles. From Mexico, U.S. imports worth of $420 billion, and trade deficit is of $112 billion, with the goods like auto parts, avocados, appliances. From Germany, U.S. imports worth of $155 billion, and trade deficit is of $67 billion, with the goods like cars, pharmaceuticals. From India, U.S. imports worth of $97 billion, and trade deficit is of $45 billion, with the goods like generic drugs, apparel. From Vietnam, U.S. imports worth of $135 billion, and trade deficit is of $95 billion, with the goods like furniture, footwear, electronics. Tariffs of 15% to 35% are being imposed depending on the category of goods. Items whose supply chain will get impacted. Consumer electronics are imported from China, will now face tariff at 34%. Hence, the expected price rise is around 18 to 22%. On higher smartphone and laptop prices. Automobiles and parts are imported from Germany and Mexico, will now face tariff at 20%. Hence, the expected price rise is around 12 to 15%. On new cars and repairs, apparel and footwear are imported from Vietnam and India, will now face tariff at 24% to 40%. Hence, the expected price rise is around 10 to 12%. On costlier clothing and sneakers, pharmaceuticals are imported from India and Germany, will now face tariff at 26%. Hence, the expected price rise is around 8 to 10%. On generic drug, healthcare services, furniture and appliances are imported from Vietnam and China, will now face tariff at 30% to 40%. Hence, the expected price rise is around 12%. On household budget, solar panels are imported from China, will now face tariff at 34%. Hence, the expected price rise is around 25 to 30%. On clean energy transition, impact on trade routes and logistics. Major routes affected. Pacific trade route, Asia to U.S. West Coast. Transatlantic route, Europe to U.S. East Coast. North American land border crossings, Mexico, U.S. Impact. Port congestion likely to drop by 15 to 20% due to decreased import volumes. Average ocean freight volume from China expected to reduce by 28% in Q2 2025. Transatlantic shipping volume is forecast to fall 12%, affecting key ports like New York NJ and Savannah. Truck shipments from Mexico projected to decrease 11%, causing up to $2.5 billion in losses for cross-border logistics companies. Transit time for goods redirected from China to India or Latin America could rise by 25 to 40%, increasing costs by 10 to 15%. Changes in global sourcing strategy. Companies are now reassessing their global sourcing footprints to mitigate the impact of tariffs. Example strategies. Diversification of suppliers. Brands are moving from single-source China to multi-country sourcing models. E.g., Nike shifting footwear production to Indonesia and Ethiopia. Nearshoring, leveraging proximity manufacturing, e.g. apparel brands setting up in Mexico and Central America. Onshoring/reshoring, U.S. incentives are prompting companies to produce domestically. For example, Intel building new semiconductor fabs in Ohio. Vertical integration, large manufacturers acquiring suppliers to reduce external dependencies. Digitized procurement systems, tools like SAP Ariba and Coupa to compare cost scenarios in real time. Example: Walmart is in talks with suppliers in Bangladesh and Honduras to offset rising costs from Chinese tariffs. Who ultimately pays the price? Consumers are the ultimate bearers of increased tariffs. Understand with example. A $500 smartphone imported from China faces a 25% tariff, that is $125. If passed to the consumer, final retail price equals $625. If absorbed by business, margins shrink from $100 to minus $25, making the product unprofitable. So product need to be sold at higher price to get margin of $100, so the real price to the consumer will be $725. In the 2018 to 2019 U.S.-China trade war, consumer prices for washing machines rose by 12% within 6 months, and retailers experienced a 10% plus decline in sales volume. A generic drug costing $10 to import from India could now cost $12, affecting insurance premiums and out-of-pocket costs. Future of supply chain if tariffs persist. If these tariffs become permanent, we can expect decentralized supply chains, more regional production hubs, increased use of predictive analytics and AI to evaluate total landed cost and tariff exposure. Strategic inventory buildup, as seen during COVID-19, buffer stocks might become normalized. Resurgence of bilateral trade deals. Countries may bypass WTO frameworks for security-based trade arrangements. Growth in domestic manufacturing, particularly in critical sectors like EVs, chips, and defense. Long-term, this will result in higher costs but improved resilience. Conclusion: President Trump's April 2, 2025 tariff move is a seismic shift for global trade. While aimed at protecting American industries, the ripple effects span pricing, sourcing, logistics, and consumer behavior. Businesses must now pivot to more resilient, diversified, and transparent supply chain models to thrive in this new economic landscape. As the dust settles, data-driven decision-making, agility, and global scenario planning will determine which companies lead in the post-tariff economy. Like, share, and comment what you think about Trump's tariffs. Don't forget to subscribe for weekly breakdowns of the world's biggest supply chain stories. Become a member for exclusive content, early access, and global logistics insights. Join membership button. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay informed and supply smart.